Hello, and thank you for coming to this Mounds View School Board Candidate Forum. My name is Victoria Prasic, and I represent the New Brighton Area League of Women Voters. The New Brighton Area League of Women Voters has run candidate forums for more than 60 years. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that encourages informed and active participation in government and influences public policy through education and advocacy. It does not support or oppose specific political parties or candidates. All candidates who filed to be on the ballot for ISD 621, Independent School District 621, have been invited to attend. Our moderator tonight is Florence Sprague from the Roseville League. Moderator Sprague will explain the rules that will be followed at this candidate forum.
Good evening and welcome. As she mentioned, I am a member of the Roseville Area League. I live in Maplewood, and so love them or hate them, I don't get to vote for anybody on the podium tonight. She said I'd do the ground rules. So some of the rules are the fact that everything is timed. You get up to 2 minutes for your opening statements, up to 1 minute for responses to questions, and there'll be a 1 minute closing. Questions and responses must all be applicable to every candidate, and there should be no personal attacks. Tell us what you think. The voters need to know what you think, not what you think about somebody else. So there's a timer. The timers are sitting here to my right, and since there are many people and many issues, we will try to keep things moving. Because of the size of the field, we don't want to dawdle. Okay, we have 9 of the 11 candidates with us tonight. 8, oh, that's true, 8, we're down to 8 of the 11 candidates. One candidate, Dr. Richard Priore, regrets that he had to be out of town for a work retreat this week and could not attend. And I believe Jonathan Weinhagen also had a business commitment out of town. I do not have a statement from the other candidate who is not here. The forum is being recorded by 9 North, so it will be able to be viewed by people in the public later on. The recording should appear several times between now and the election. Please check their schedule for the times. Okay, and before we begin, we need to acknowledge, that our communities are located on the ancestral lands of the Dakota and Ojibwe peoples, acquired by theft and deceit and forced by genocidal forced removal of populations. The colonial and racist ideologies and systems of the past are embedded in our current systems in subtle and not so subtle ways and require our mindfulness to create ever greater equity. Okay, and now we all need to take a moment to take out our cell phones and make sure that the ringers are off, okay? Audience especially, but everybody, make sure your ringer is off. Thank you. And with that, I will introduce the candidates. I'm reading their names alphabetically, which is how they are seated. So beginning on my left, Heidi Kakamo. Did I get the stress right? Okay. Alyssa Dare Nelson, Heidi Danielson, Jim DeMay, Mark Kelleher, Andre Cohen, Art Mills, and then alphabetically would be Richard Priore and John Van Overen, and then Paul Wickstrom is here. Oh, and I left out John Weinhagen. Okay, so we have 8 of these 11. They were all invited, but circumstances intervene, I'm afraid. Okay. With that, let's go to the opening statements. Timers, are we ready? Okay. You'll have 2 minutes. We drew numbers for the order of the opening statements, and Mark Kelleher drew number 1.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity, and I'd also like to acknowledge all the passion that all of the candidates have brought to the race. I'm Mark Kelleher, and I'm running for school board because I'm concerned about the erosion in academic performance that we've been experiencing. When my wife Kathy and I moved into the school district almost 40 years ago, 621 was one of the best school districts in the northern suburbs. Now we are just on par with our neighbors. I want to get us back on track to being a beacon of academic excellence. Less than 2/3 of our 10th graders can read at grade level, and less than half of our 11th graders are doing math at grade level. Results like these are not reflective of a school system that is a beacon of academic excellence. And academic excellence is what our students deserve. I have several ideas on how we can move forward. First, I want to revisit the policy that restricts homework for elementary school students and discourages it in middle school. These early years are formative in the learning process, so homework should be allowed. Also, if we apply more intense resources towards our students who speak English as a second language, I think overall results can improve. Getting us back on track will require work and commitment from everyone, parents, students, and teachers alike. I am committed to this goal. I have the experience and the energy to get this job done, but I need your help to get elected. You can learn more about my views, including my idea to reintroduce industrial arts into the middle school platform and curriculum by going to my website, mark621schools.com. Thank you.
Thank you. The next opening statement will be from Heidi Danielson.
Hello, my name is Heidi Danielson, and I'm running for re-election to the Mounds View School Board. I've served on the school board the last 4 years, and I am committed to continuing the work supporting the staff and administration who work in each of our schools and programs across the district for our students. I've lived in the Mounds View district for 26 years with my husband while we raised our 3 children. First, we lived in Mounds View, and 16 years ago, we moved to northern New Brighton. I served as classroom volunteer and with many school-wide activities while my kids went through early childhood family education programs. They attended Pinewood Elementary, and then when we moved to Sunnyside Elementary, we're proud Edgewood Eagle graduates as well as Irondale Knights. My kids graduated from Irondale in 2015, 2018, and 2021. I've also been quite involved with our schools at the district level. I served on the District Curriculum Advisory Committee, the District-Wide Facilities Task Force, and I've been a trustee on the Mounds View Schools Education Foundation for the past 7 years. In 2017, I served as the campaign manager for Neighbors United, which was the committee that supported the successful bond campaign, which was responsible for funding the construction of new and renovated spaces across our district. I've also proudly served on the Mounds View District Equity Council since its inception in 2020. Through my volunteer work in the schools and my work as a para in our district for several years, I've seen many of the dedicated staff who work every day serving our students and our community. Our school district has a history of providing excellence for our students and our community, and I feel called to continue the work with the administration and the staff, continue to provide opportunities for each and every student in the Mounds View School District. I'm glad to be here tonight, grateful for the New Brighton League of Women's Voters, and excited to share more about myself and my goals for the district in the future.
Thank you. The next opening statement will be from Paul Wickstrom.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay? I'm Paul Wickstrom, school board candidate, Mounds View School District. Thank you to the League of Women Voters of New Brighton for hosting this tonight. First, a little bit about me. I've lived in the district for 27 years. My wife, Liz, and I have raised 3 children from K through 12 in the district. If you want to know more about my qualifications, you can go to my website, Wickstrom for School Board, but I want to give a brief summary of who I am. Within the district, I've been very active as a youth soccer coach, soccer club board member, and booster club board member. In those roles, I also interfaced with school districts and cities quite a bit. I've held leadership positions at the board level, and in my engineering and management professional experience, I've managed large projects and led many people and also worked with and across many cultures locally and globally. I started thinking about running for school board in early 2022, and the current school board no longer allowed parents and voters to speak at the regular board meetings. Since then, I've learned that our schools have a safety problem. There's a lot of fighting in our schools, and the academic performance is really suffering. Less than 66% of our 10th graders are reading at grade level. Our district is 124th in the state at the 3rd grade reading level. Those stats come from Minnesota Department of Education and Minnesota Compass. In my 9 North video, I also profiled from U.S. News and World Report some concerning statistics about Mounds View and Irondale high schools. Parents need to work with teachers to seek better outcomes. That's another part of my platform. I'm committed to this race because I care about our district. I have strong active listening skills, and I'm very collaborative in my approach to working with others. I want to promote an environment in which this district inspires its students to achieve, in the words of John F. Kennedy, a rising tide lifts all boats. My vision for this district is simple: provide a safe, fun, and academically thriving environment in which all students are committed to be their best.
Thank you. The next opening statement will be from Alyssa Dare Nelson.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. In recent years, we have seen increasing division, fear, frustration, hatred. On top of the challenges that have been provided by COVID, our kids, our students, our staff, parents, they've affected all of us. My name is Alyssa Dare Nelson. I live in Shoreview with my husband and my 2 amazing daughters. They attended Turtle Lake, then Chippewa, and they are now at Mounds View High School. And they've had incredible experiences. By day, I run a company that helps businesses to thrive by helping their staff to thrive. We help them to create inclusive, diverse, strengths-based cultures where all feel that they belong. I'm running for 4 reasons for school board. 1 is to increase support for mental health services and well-being support. 2, to increase and to support teachers to be able to teach with the resources that they need, to support inclusive and comprehensive curriculum, and to improve collaboration and communication between staff, school board, and families. I value respectful and courageous conversation. That's the reason for the red lipstick, if you're wondering, to remind me to be courageous, while leveraging our strengths, seeking collective wisdom, and measuring what truly matters for success. It would be an honor to represent you and your family on the Mounds View School Board. Thank you.
Thank you. The next opening statement will be from Andre Cohen.
Andre Cohen, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this dynamic panel of community members. It is often said that out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. I stand before you with my heart and passion laid bare. As I talk about the importance of school board members like me who are dedicated to the well-being of our children and the nature and the future of our communities. It is no secret that party politics has made even school board elections partisan and polarizing. I believe that there is no place for that here. I see missed opportunities for understanding. I see sideshows of mudslinging and divisive commentary that detracts from our primary focus, our children. In this divisive climate, we need to remember that we are all searching for the best ways to secure safety, significance, and belonging, even if our methods are different. A famous quote tells us that a riot is the voice of the unheard. So let's apply that to what we witness in our schools today. When young people are not seen and heard, they riot, both on the outside and on the inside. When students act out in class, it is a sideshow that points to deeper issues, not feeling seen, heard, or acknowledged. And this is an issue that I'm committed to address. Our schools are also currently embroidered in divisive conversations on topics like critical race theory, banning books, helping students to navigate conflict with civility, or even discounting the fact that 20 to 30% of our 11th graders do not identify as heterosexual. These discussions contribute to the internal riots that manifest as life-ending behaviors of our children. It is my duty to run to make sure that these are heard. Thank you.
Thank you. The next opening statement is from Art Mills.
Hi, my name is Art Mills, and I'm really just a dad. If you go to my website and look at my credentials, it just says Dad. My oldest daughter, my biggie, just graduated from the Mounds U, and she's now a freshman at the University of Minnesota. She is in the College of Science and Engineering. My biddy is at Mounds U right now as a junior. She's a two-sport varsity athlete, and she is spending most of her time keeping her first boyfriend from me so we can't become really good friends because he plays football, and I would probably like him a lot. Maybe more than her. Sometimes. So, in entering this race and kind of digging into Mounds View's policies and Mounds View's metrics, I've come to believe that the reason why I'm here is to help solve the tale of two districts that our district suffers from. What I mean by that is, in the district that ends in Mounds View High School, things are going fairly well. The proficiency rating is 70.3% for math, 71.2% for reading, and 66.1% for science in the 2023 metrics released by the state of Minnesota on their website. This spiked very high in 2021, has come down a little bit. Science has come down generally since 2019, okay? On the side of the district that ends at Irondale, the tale is distinctly different and kind of depressingly so. It's 42.9% in math, it's 49.8% in reading, and it's 37.1% in science. The school reports a 50.6% attendance rate that is 23 points below district average. The Mounds U Equity Promise and the very first policy on the school board state that the school your student goes to will not predict their success. Quite frankly, we have failed in our promise. The reason why there are 8 people up here and 11 people running is because the current school board has failed in its promise. We can do better. We need to come together as a group and use aggressive policy determinations to make a difference. We need to create an environment and change the tale so that we can create a conducive environment for all of our kids to succeed. If we do that as a school board, we have nothing to hide from the mists of the future going back to Dickens. Sorry, thank you, bye.
Thank you. And the final opening statement from Jim, oh, no, I skipped Heidi. The next opening statement from Heidi Kakamo.
You. So I am Heidi Kakamo. I have been in the district for 12 years. I moved here for the schools. My 3 nieces had amazing experiences in the district. I have 2 children at Chippewa Middle School. One is at Turtle Lake. And frankly, we've had a pretty good experience, I have to say. I am proud, very proud of those schools. We've had wonderful teachers that we've worked with. But like many parents, I'm quite concerned about the direction of Mounds View School District. Art actually just mentioned some of the major disparities in looking at the data. I can talk about how proud I am of my children at Turtle Lake. But last night, speaking with a large group of folks in Mounds View, the city of Mounds View, they're at Pinewood Elementary, and their statistics are about half. So you can look at Turtle Lake, and about 70% of those students are reading at grade level. But you look at Pinewood, it's closer to 30. So we have some huge disparities, and I'm glad Art brought that up. So it hasn't affected me directly. The reason I started running and really dug in is because I was concerned about the safety of my children. Constant, violent fighting, punching in the middle school, I had no idea existed. This led me to do some digging and find out that at Mounds View was even worse. And you start talking at Irondale, even worse. And at Edgewood, the police have already been called there 10 times this year. And that's not an environment for our students to thrive. We wonder why our academics are declining. It's because our teachers cannot focus on academics. They cannot focus on teaching the students. The children are distracted. So I'm running because I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated with when I'm sending my kids to school. Will they be in a fight? Will they be attacked? I'm running because of the other students at other schools that have even more issues. I'm running for the entire community. I'm running to support our teachers, trying to thrive in this environment that is very chaotic, and we just putting more and more on them. So I'm running because I'm passionate, not just about my own children, but really about parents, teachers, the community, and all of us.
Thank you. And now the last opening statement from Jim DeMay.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Jim DeMay, and I'm running for re-election to the Mounds View School Board. I grew up in Shoreview, attended Island Lake, Chippewa, and graduated from Mounds View High School. And like many of you, I moved back to have my kids experience the excellent education you get from the Mounds View Public Schools. I'm running again, and my focus will be on kids in the classroom. 76% of our budget goes to classroom instruction, teachers, paras, tools for our kids to succeed. Where you put your money is a pretty major statement. Our district focuses on best instructional practices, innovation, and we have quality teachers. 98% of our teachers are Tier 3 licensed or above. 65% of them have master's degrees, and they have years and years of experience in the classroom. During COVID, we learned many things. One thing that became clear is that our kids learn best in a appropriately sized classroom with a well-qualified teacher. We've implemented a strong program in this district from learning loss from COVID. Our intervention specialists give our kids extra reading and math help. We review progress on a personal level every 8 weeks with these kids to make sure they catch up. I believe this kind of personal attention will produce substantial improvement with our young folks. We are leaders in this district in career pathways for our Irondale and Mounds View students. We were the first district in the state to implement early college with Anoka Ramsey. This program has saved families over $4 million in college tuition while these kids still attend high school. We have expanded our Career Pathways program to include things like welding, and we have over 40 community partners in high school that give our kids internships for real job experience. Over the next 4 years, I look forward to creating a stronger early childhood program. We now have 500 youngsters. The legislature has provided us more money for these students so that all kids are ready to learn by kindergarten. The Mounds View School District remains a great place to live, learn, grow in a safe and equitable environment, and thank you for having me this evening.
Thank you. Okay, for the first question, I'll make it easy on the candidates and the cameraman, and we're just going to go down the line. So we'll begin with Heidi Kakamo. Okay, the school board is accountable. Sorry, I should reiterate. This is just 1 minute, 1 minute per person. The school board is accountable to multiple groups of stakeholders: students, parents, teachers, other staff, the community, the state. What is the best way to get input from these stakeholders? And then how do you balance what may be competing demands?
Thank you. I think that's a wonderful question because, frankly, that's what makes Mounds View so wonderful, is that there are so many stakeholders that want to be involved. If you look back decades, the community has always been involved with our district. I do believe that first and foremost, we need to open up our school boards to true public comment where there can be engagement. And people know what others are actually saying, so it is public and parents and the community can hear from others. I think that's number one. That could be a struggle, as we know there are strong opinions. And we also need to have some open forums. We should be doing town halls on a regular basis, especially covering some of these heated topics. We need to make sure that all the voices are heard because our community has become very diverse, particularly in the last 4 years. It has changed significantly. Without hearing the voices of everyone, how can we be making choices that truly represent everybody?
Thank you. Next response, Alyssa Dare Nelson.
Thank you. Ready? One of the values that I hold very dearly is gathering the collective wisdom. Many, many minds together will always come up with a better and more innovative solution than just a few people. So it's really important to me that we get creative to gather that collective wisdom. One of the changes that was made recently was to move comment before the school board meeting. What this has done is it's actually increased the amount of conversation and collaboration when people show up. So it's really important for us to get creative and to be together to find common ground and work towards one goal: our students.
Thank you. Next response from Heidi Danielson.
Great question. I think there are so many stakeholders who have such value of our education. I look at our community when I was involved in the bond, that we have more households in our district that do not have children in our schools than do. And that bond initiative was the biggest in Minnesota at that time, and it passed with a rate of 74%. We have huge, huge support from our community. We also have a lot of support from our staff, but I think in the last 3 years, it's our staff that's really been taken the brunt of a lot of what's gone on during COVID. And I think that's one of the things that our school board is very intentional about, is listening to our teacher leaders. We have teacher leaders in each building, and really hearing from them as to what grade level, what subject matter, and what each building's community is hearing and needing. And so I think we are open. I think we need to continue to seek out that feedback and that information at all times.
Thank you. Next response from Jim DeMay.
I take really a great pleasure in getting out in the community and talking to people where they are. This week I've been to band concerts, athletic events, farmers markets, and some playgrounds. I go to PTO meetings. I like to be out there listening to folks, because when you meet people where they are, that you just have a lot better, pleasant conversations. And the insights you get from parents at these places are very, very, very interesting. You can go to one place, hear one thing, another place, another thing, but those voices are very clear and honest. And one thing I have enjoyed, since we do have a comment period for the school board now, it is no longer televised, and I understand some people have issues with that, but it has allowed a lot of people to come and personally talk to us, not in a 1-minute snippet, but a real conversation about their issue personal with their kid that they might not actually speak on TV about.
Thank you. Next response from Mark Kelleher.
Thank you. First off, I believe success in education, to get the students to become the best version of who they can be, requires the inputs from the teacher, requires the dedication of the parents behind the student, and of course the student doing the work. At the end of the day, the goal is to get these kids ready for the real world, give them the skills to think for themselves and to do well out in the real world. I too am disappointed at the fact that this current school board does not have open comments available during the school board meetings itself, and that would be something I would immediately change if I were on the school board. Thank you.
Thank you. Next response from Andre Cohen.
Yes, one of the things that I think is really important is, as we look around the room, who is not at the table? Who's not been invited to the table? As I've spent a lot of my campaign looking at our communities, I see people who look up much like us, and I don't see many people who look like them, the other, the folks who don't know about how to participate in these civil engagements. And so one of the things that I would do is make sure that all of us on the school board are assigned to cities to go to those city meetings and build better relationships with our cities, because it is there where people live and breathe and build community. The last thing is make sure that we invite people to the dance and we play music that they will dance to. Thank you.
Thank you. Next response from Art Mills.
Yeah, I think that I agree with what Mark and Heidi said about opening the board meeting up, but I also agree with what Jim said. You have to go to where the people are, to talk to the people where they're at. And as much as I love me, and I do, my ideas aren't so good that I can't improve upon them by talking to others. And I have blatantly stolen this great idea from Paul, so I'm going to take credit for it. I intend to go to the schools and talk to them, a little like you had just mentioned. You need to go into the schools. You need to make yourself available to the parents, the teachers, the community, and say, what do you have? And then I'll bring that information back to my fellow board members, and I'll help them understand what the people are saying, where they're at. And so you have to do both. They have to be able to come and yell, even if they don't like you very much. Let them yell. It's fine. And then you have to be able to go where they are and get what they really feel, where they won't yell at you. So.
Thank you. Next response from Paul Wickstrom.
I don't know if there's a best way to get feedback, but here's my general approach. But first of all, with the school board meetings, that's why I started down this path. The school board meetings were closed from public input. What is that giving up? Is giving up accountability and awareness to the broader community. And so that would be the first thing I'd work on, is to open up the regular school board meetings to a defined period of public input. As far as giving feedback, I would directly talk to stakeholder groups, which would include teachers, parents, students, administrators, and the people providing the services within the schools. So what's going well, what could be different, are two very powerful questions that I've gotten a lot of traction from. It's important to have multiple lines of communication, a one-on-one or other forms of communication for people that prefer a more private communication path. But like Art said, part of my plan is to go into the classroom and the schools and observe. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now it's going to get a little trickier because from now on, I'm going to mostly be mixing things up, and I will try to be clear for both the candidates and the cameramen. Camera operators, I didn't look to see, sorry. Okay, the first of the responses for the next question will begin with Andre Cohen. I'll give you that much of a heads up. Okay, there's been a lot of talk about the desire for academic excellence, but how do we measure academic excellence? Is it just a numbers game, or do we have to look at how many opt-outs there are, how many different subgroups you've got to look at, English learners, homeless, how do you measure academic excellence? What should be the inputs? And what's been the impact of COVID on things like this, on test scores?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I'll talk about my family, and we have 1 minute, is that correct? All right.
Yeah.
So I'll use my family as a metaphor. My daughter was probably the first of her generation to ever enter kindergarten on a laptop. And so going into that, we recognized that our daughter was in uncharted human territory. She was a groundbreaker. And so our expectations for her were things that we could not even imagine ourselves. And so when we think about these drop-offs or we think about these delays, we've never had a pandemic like that that impacted how we do schooling. And so I congratulate the students that my daughter goes to school with for joining in insurmountable odds. How do we do this? How do we measure that? Target never blames the customer for things that they can't sell. And so if we're not doing well in our schools, we can't blame the students and their families. We have to look internally and figure out how do we do things more efficiently and better. Thank you.
Thank you. Next response from Mark Kelleher.
Madam Moderator, could you repeat the question, please?
Well, it won't come out exactly the same since I was trying to put several on this topic together, but it's on academic excellence. There's been a lot of interest in academic excellence, but how do you measure it? Is it just a numbers game? Are we just looking at statistics? And if so, do we have to take into account opt-outs, English learners, homeless students, and so on? Or are there other ways to measure excellence besides test scores? And then also, what about the impact of COVID?
Thank you for repeating the question.
Mm-hmm.
So the testing is a bugaboo. I've been out knocking on doors, hundreds of doors, and I've talked to dozens and dozens of teachers and retired teachers, and the end result is testing. Nobody likes it, but it's a fact of life. And when you think of it, testing occurs all throughout anybody's regular career. The plumber we had do some work on our house, he needed to be tested for his proficiency to get his license. Likewise for the stylist who does your hair, likewise for the electrician. So at the end of the day, tests are a part of life. And in this case, academic testing is about the only, crude as it might be, is about the only opportunity that we've got to measure things on a broad basis. But at the end of the day, having teachers directly involved with instructing children as individuals is going to be key to moving things along.
Thank you. Next response from Heidi Kakamo.
Thank you. So I think test scores are just very helpful for trends. They're not the answer to everything. Obviously, we know there are so many outliers, but we need some sort of accountability. There are state rankings for schools that really take into account all of these things. And frankly, it's not that complicated. You can look at Mounds View's numbers on the data, and you can see that opt-outs have been pretty consistent, and you can see the reading proficiencies falling. You can take out the ESL students that have increased by almost 800% in the last 4 years, and you can see that the data it's still falling. So although it seems complex, there are great systems to interpret it and still look at it. And I think, yes, we're not going to hold it to just this one number, but I think we need some accountability. We need to see how we're doing with our students. Each individual, you're saying individual student, yes, we get that, but as a whole, are we failing all of them? Are we failing part of them? We need to know how we're doing so we can improve.
Thank you. Next response will be Heidi Danielson.
Great question, and there's lots of components of that. I will speak to the opt-out. For those people who don't know, every parent is given the option for their student to not take standardized tests. That number has grown every year exponentially, and an opt-out is considered not proficient. So it's not taken out of the testing, it's someone who's considered not proficient. So that is a challenge. We want parents to have that choice for their students. With the focus on mental health, we know that standardized tests are very stressful for our students. So the format we've taken, Jim referred to this earlier, is we do have intervention specialists at each grade level in each of our schools. And they're assessing students constantly. Right now at the beginning of the year, they've taken the first 3 weeks of the year to assess every student in a non-stressful situation, determine what needs they have, and in 8 weeks they'll reevaluate, move on, and reassess at that point in time. It's real-time data that's much more beneficial for each student.
Thank you. Next response from Alyssa Dare Nelson.
Is anyone familiar with who Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is?
Yes.
If you were to look at his weight, he would register as obese. Would anyone agree that he is obese? Numbers are one measure, they are not the only measure. It is not enough to take a once-a-year testing score and say, this child, this school is successful or not. We do have to look at other measures of success. What we also know about measures of well-being is that measures of well-being are actually the best leading indicators to success. Lots of kids, lots of teachers were not well and are working on becoming more well post-COVID. This is what we need to focus on. When people are well, they do well.
Thank you. Next response from Jim DeMay.
The Mounds way, the way we look at excellence in the school, we constantly review and improve our teaching practices. We always need to dig and reevaluate. We do use data, but we use science, teacher evaluations, and look at best practices. As Heidi said, that's how we came up with the teacher intervention program. We thought this was the best way to look at it, and every 8 weeks, we look at it again and we look at it again. Test scores help us, but your kid's not a test score. They're your kids. Teacher evaluations is where it's at, and teachers in the classroom is where it's at. You can talk about things like U.S. News World Report. I just bragged about our early college program, and guess what? That program hurt us in U.S. News and World Report. Why? Because those kids stopped taking AP classes because they wanted to get a year of college done at Anoka Ramsey, St. Cloud State, or the University of Minnesota, and that dropped our rankings. I'll go with the students rather than the rankings any day of the week.
Thank you. Next response from Paul Wickstrom.
Hi, yes, tests matter. Standard test scores, really tell us about not just how the students are doing, but how the schools are doing. So we got to look at performance for a few different reasons. Independent rankings do matter. There are real stats in those U.S. News and World Report that talk about the graduation rates and the proficiencies, and not just who's taking AP classes, but those independent rankings do matter. One of the most important measures, is indirect, but are people moving to this district because they want to bring their kids here for education, or are they leaving? That's a measure. And teacher surveys and attendance, those matter. Tests matter across the board occupationally. I'm a flight instructor. I just trained my son to be a private pilot August 26th. I know, Jim, you're probably sending your congratulations, but he took a test, and that was probably the most stressful day of my life, was for him to take that test. But that's the way this world is. We have to take tests to be certified and to do what we do in the real world.
Thank you. And the final response to this question, Art Mills.
Thank you. Best for last. Thank you very much. Look, simply put, they keep score for a reason. Scores matter. Proficiency scores matter. Period. End of story. There's no other argument there. Are there other things around it? Sure. But let me be the first person to really focus on the COVID piece. Okay? It wasn't COVID that has hurt our numbers. Frankly, it's what happened in May of 2020. It is changing our student learning and performance-based learning grading expectations to a book written by Joe Feldman, Grading for Equity. It's no longer grading homework the same way, no longer caring about attendance. The soft skills of life, where Alyssa Dare Nelson said that you measure your life by happiness or whatever, you measure your life by showing up. You go to work. You don't get to not be at work. You get measured by the soft skills of life. Your knowledge is great, but the soft skills of life matter. And if we're not teaching our kids that showing up matters, that turning in work matters, that homework matters, we're failing them. In AP classes, we make that matter. We need to make it matter for all of our kids.
Thank you. Okay, responses for the next question will begin with Mark Kelleher. You may hear a lot in the news about mental health issues for teens in particular, sometimes tied to social media, sometimes to other things. More than 1/3 of Minnesota students are struggling with long-term mental health problems, according to a 2022 student survey by the state of Minnesota. Former Health Commissioner Dr. Jan Malcolm called the situation a crisis, and LGBTQ plus students are often particularly vulnerable. Is there a mental health problem in our district? And if so, what should the schools be doing to address it?
Thank you. There is definitely a mental health crisis, and it's not isolated to our school system, and it's not isolated to school systems in general. Just recently, we learned that there are suicides that take place at work are on the rise. So mental health is a nationwide epidemic, and it's one that needs to be addressed. As far as what it is we can do to address it at the school level, first and foremost, we need to address the aggressive bullying behavior that takes place in schools. Nobody wants to go to school if they're worried about getting jumped or having their nose broken or any other sort of violence. It's not a healthy environment. It's certainly not mentally healthy, and it certainly doesn't do anything for academic performance.
Thank you. Next response from Paul Wickstrom.
I would agree with Mark. Mental health is a crisis. It's affected my family personally when I was growing up. I had a brother who committed suicide when I was 16, and I went into foster care almost immediately along with my sister. And so mental health is something that's near and dear and personal to me as far as knowing the effects that it has on a family. So, within our district, and like Mark says, we have a nationwide crisis when it comes to mental health. But within our district, I'll recite some statistics from the surveys from the 10-year period of 2013 to 2022. 8th grade boys reported a 54% increase in self-harming behavior, while 8th grade girls reported a 95% increase. In that same 10-year period, 8th grade boys answering yes. Have you seriously considered attempting suicide during the last year? In that same 10-year period, 8th grade boys answering yes increased 67%, while 8th grade girls increased 92%. What can we do about it? We need to do everything we can within our means to help the mental health crisis, including bringing in full-time counselors, paid employees.
Okay, thank you. Next response from Melissa Dare Nelson.
As you've already heard, mental health supports is something that is very, very important to me. Our district has done a great job in beginning this journey. One of the challenges that we are facing is that not everybody knows what resources are available in our district. So information access is something that's really important. We need to sit down and figure out how can we get further information into the hands of families and students so they can access these services. Not only that, let's get in front of it and let's do more with regards to well-being. Let's build the resilience of these kiddos and these staff members as we move forward, right? Not only that, we also need to talk about it more. We need to talk about stigma. Stigma is still something that holds people back from getting support.
Thank you. Next response from Art Mills.
Yeah, I mean, mental health is obviously a critical problem in our society in general. I have a personal story I could tell, but then my daughter would kill me, so I'm not going to. But you have to ask why it's happening, and it's tied, I think, a great deal to social media. I think it's also tied a great deal to the drip torture of telling some groups of children that they're marginalized, that they're victimized, that they can't exceed. They can't succeed because of who they are at birth, who they are as a group. We need to spend more time telling our kids that we love them, that we care for them, all of them. It doesn't matter what they are. It doesn't matter if they're gay, straight, white, black, yellow. It doesn't matter. We love our kids. We want them to know we love them. And if we can't communicate that to them, that they're all equal, that they're all loved, that they're all cared for, then we're doing bad jobs as adults, we're doing bad jobs as parents. And I think that we spend a lot of time with divisive politics that people have mentioned here tonight, and one of the things that our kids are hearing is that some kids can't make it because of who they are at birth. And I think that's wrong, and I think that's a direction we don't want to go, and I think it's regressive.
Thank you. Next response, Heidi Danielson.
Yes, I agree that mental health is a crisis around our nation. I have two daughters who are both going into the field because of just what they've seen with their own friends and want to help. So I think it's definitely a big thing. I think the interesting thing here in our district is that in 2017, students brought this to the board and the administration. Students came to the school board meeting and said, "We need your help." And the district responded. Surveys, really talking to parents and talking to students, and really trying to work to provide wraparound services for students. What is the core? What is at the heart of that mental health need that students have? And so there's a lot of support around that for students. I agree that students need to know how to access it, and I really think that students need to feel seen for who they are, valued for who they are, welcomed, and feel like they belong in our schools.
Thank you. Next response from Andre Cohen.
Yes, I believe that it's important that folks get safety, significance, and belonging. We're all looking for safety, significance, and belonging. And the more that we can create those in our schools, the more we can get kids what they need. And you don't have to take my lead. Take Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs and get those basic needs to our kids. So how do we do that? We do that partially through social emotional learning. I believe that once kids know how to navigate conflict and build resiliency, we can see some of these curbs tied. The other thing to ask is, what are we getting kids resilient to? So resiliency is not an answer in and of itself, because you can become resilient to something that is negative, and that's where I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Next response, let's see, that was Jim DeMay.
Thank you. I was in 2017. I was really moved by our students coming to us and talking to us about the mental health issue. Mounds U did something called the Bandana Project and won several awards where the kids put bandanas around their backpacks and said they're available to talk to people and try to get them to the right spot if they were having issues. We have really doubled down on our counseling, our training with teachers, our training of deans. We've added chemical dependency counselors in the high schools. And we also have to, and we've worked with local social service agencies. But what we have found out, too, the kids that do the best in the schools are the students who really have a strong connectedness. We have worked very hard to have something for everybody at our schools. If you want to be on the mountain bike team, the Dungeons and Dragons team, the varsity football team, we have tried to be very inclusive and get kids to belong and feel at home at our schools.
Thank you. And the final response on this question, Heidi Kakamo.
So we all know mental health is a huge issue, and just looking at the data when we looked at the questionnaires from Mounds View were shocking. So 8th grade boys specifically having long-term mental health issues, or actually it's the girls, I apologize, the boys are doing a lot better. Our 8th grade girls have increased by 178%, the ones having issues seeking treatment. It's gone up that far since 2013. So we definitely have a huge problem. It's a major. I think one of the big things I'd like to go back to is safety. I'm sorry, so many people I have talked to, their kids are afraid to go to school. The bathroom doors are locked. They have to go to the nurse's station. I would be freaked out. I'd be having issues. That's just one. I just feel like that's a huge problem I always like to go back to because, goodness, I'm nervous sending my kids to school. And I think we need more mental health professionals in the school. We're putting it on the teachers at this point, and I don't think that's enough. I think we're adding more to them. They're already busy plate, and we need to get more professionals.
Thank you. Okay, and for the next question, responses will begin with Jim DeMay. Okay. Yep. We ready? Okay. What does school safety mean to you? In what ways would you work to protect our students' learning environment?
Well, Heidi mentioned earlier that we passed a bond levy referendum in 2017, and we invested in new entrances and in exits and new cameras and made our schools a lot more safer and sound for people who don't belong there. We kept our school resources officers. We have Mounds View, New Brighton, and Ramsey County sheriffs working with our students and talking to them. We have, in the past year, instituted modern safety protocols and communications for emergencies, and we really are pushing student connectedness and mental health support with all the kids with issues, because those are the kids who act up. So I think we have invested properly in this area, and there's a lot more things to do, and thank you.
Thank you. Next response from Andre Cohen.
No, I was writing my answer down. I was trying to get it all in. All right. So I think there's two elements of safety. One is psychological safety. So are people free to be psychologically safe in their school environments? Are they free to express themselves, to explore strange new worlds? And secondly is physical safety. I believe that there are lines on the roads for a reason. I hate driving in the wintertime because I don't know where the lines are. And so we definitely need lines on the road. And when we come to talk about school resource officers, the real question is why do we have them? Because once we're clear on why we have them, then we can use them appropriately to get to our goal. So I think safety is about psychological safety. I think safety is also about physical safety. And I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Next response, Paul Wickstrom.
What does school safety mean to me? It's really, I'm the most concerned about the fighting, and I've heard that anecdotally from a lot of doors that I've knocked on, parents, teachers, and I have that's my number one concern as far as what I think we need to address in the school environment. Like Andre says, safety is on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's necessary to a learning environment, whether it's the classroom or a training cockpit in the airplane. So I know the fundamental importance of safety as it relates to learning. People have to feel comfortable being in a constructive learning environment. So, what I would do is put a discipline policy in place. And when I use the word discipline, it's the positives and the negatives. Let's reinforce the positives that are happening in the environment, and also address the negative behaviors that are happening in the environment, so that if there's a fight, that student probably should be, taken out of the class, maybe suspended from school for some period of time. But we need a real discipline policy that works across the district.
Thank you. Next response from Art Mills.
Yeah, interestingly, I had a conversation this morning with Mr. Cohen, and we disagreed on this kind of topic because I'm going to come to the physical safety, and I'm a very big believer in progressive discipline within schools. Mounds View Student Handbook outlines their progressive discipline, which basically means you punch somebody in the nose, you're going to go home. I was sent home once. Never twice. You learn a lesson. Consequences matter. Then there is the restorative justice, and I think that if I were to give you time, maybe this is kind of where you're thinking about, where you maybe have a mediation and you talk to the kids involved and you have them discuss what happened and why. And again, this is all really wonderful and kind of advanced stuff, but do that after the suspension is served if you want to do that. You have to have consequences. You have to make kids more afraid of throwing that punch than not throwing that punch. And I know that Mr. Cohen said it was bullying by the adults. It's an interesting point. I think it's a worthy discussion. But to me, progressive discipline is the way you handle school safety issues. You send the kids home, you come back a couple days later.
Thank you. Next response, Heidi Kakamo.
Thank you. I agree we need emotional safety, but I also agree that our sixth graders should not be choked in the locker room when they're at school by repeat offenders, because those kids were kept in school afterwards. I believe that students that bring guns to school should not be back when they brandish them during a fight, should not be back in school 3 days later. I think we have a problem. I think our children need boundaries. I think we need to do a combination. I think that we need progressive discipline so they know that children actually feel safer with boundaries. We can then add in a restorative component as well. I think both of them are needed, particularly with the mental health crisis, but we cannot be sending our kids to school with this situation. Edgewood has already gotten 10 calls this year. Speaking with the concerned community members yesterday, they've already had 10 calls from police with horrible fights this year at that middle school. As a parent, do you feel safe sending your child to that? unacceptable. We need to be consistent across the district, and we do not have consistency right now. One, that is opening us up for liability, that we are picking and choosing where we want to discipline our children, and that's unacceptable.
Thank you. Next response, Alyssa Dare Nelson.
I think it's important to note that every fight, every altercation does need to be reported to the state of Minnesota. Andre talked about psychological safety, and psychological safety is incredibly important. When kids can fail and they feel like they belong, it becomes a safer place to not have to brandish knuckles, right? But to actually learn from our mistakes. That's the goal. I love to say I never lose. I either win or I learn. And our kids should be taught to do the same, and they should feel safe to do so. Who bullies? Who fights? There's these kids that probably needs a little bit more support. So we want to talk about some restorative justice. We want to talk about supporting these kids to success. That is what we need to also discuss.
Thank you. Next response, Heidi Danielson.
I think school safety is very important. We want our students to feel safe in their school, both emotionally, psychologically, as well as physically. There's some different approaches. I think that one of the interesting things is not only our different communities in our different schools, but our different partners that we have for school safety. So we're working with Mounds View, we're working with New Brighton, we're working with Ramsey County, and what we're stressing with our SROs in our schools is to build relationships with the students so that they can head off any of those conflicts and that don't lead to a physical altercation. So that's really what we're stressing, and that was one of the district operational goals last year, was to really look at our entire safety and security plans for the district. It became a 2-year goal because there's a lot of details and there's a lot to go over. So this year we're continuing to work on that. We're hearing from the community and we're responding to that and working on any issues and being proactive to set up supports as well.
Thank you. Next response from Mark Kelleher.
I've been out knocking on doors, hundreds of doors, and I've met with teachers, dozens and dozens of teachers and retired teachers, and I can tell you that not one teacher entered the profession because they were looking for a blood sport. The safety in the schools is a big concern. It's my sense that it's easier for the teachers when they hear a melee out in the hallway to simply close the doors. They don't want to get involved. That's why the school resource officers are there. And in our case, because of the legislation that's been passed, we don't have school resource officers in approximately 2/3 of our schools. I feel like our school board has failed us. They should have been a better advocate. They could at this point be an advocate and ask for our legislators to get involved and call for a special session so that the SROs can be back on site.
Thank you. And now, Jim, I've already passed your number, but I didn't check you off. Did you get to speak to this one?
Yes, I did.
Thank you. Okay, just want to make sure. Okay. Now, you've all been so cooperative about staying in your time limits, but now I'm going to speed it up even more. We're going to do a lightning round. There are 5 questions to which you get to say yes, no, maybe, and one sentence. And then we're going to, these will start with Paul and move down. The next one will start with Art, and you don't need to time this. Start with Art and move down. So I won't mix them up, okay? But these are meant to be short and, well, I don't know if they're sweet or not, but hey. Okay, so starting with Paul Wickstrom. Should the district transition to electric school buses?
No. The science behind that is not convincing in my mind.
Okay.
So as a owner of many, many shares of Tesla stock, if it's a Tesla bus, yes. If not, it's probably not ready yet. But Tesla semi-trucks are ready, and I can show you the signs on that, but the buses aren't ready yet. So.
Okay. So that was a yes when they are?
Yes, when they're ready.
Okay. Andre?
I'll say yes when they're ready too. We're not ready for prime time.
Okay. Mark?
No, not at this time.
Jim?
Yes, but it will take time.
Heidi?
Yes, and we don't own our own buses. We contract with a transportation company, so we have to work in partnership with them.
Okay, Alyssa
Yes, eventually.
and Heidi.
Same. I think we're all in agreement here. Yes, eventually when it's ready.
Okay, the next one starts with Art. Should we have police resource officers in our schools? Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay. Andre?
Yes, with a purpose.
Okay.
Yes,
Mark?
absolutely.
Jim?
Yes, but they need to focus on relationships.
Heidi?
Yes, with expectations from the district about relationships with students.
Alyssa?
Yes, and to build relationships.
Heidi?
Yes.
And Paul?
Yes, I support law enforcement's call to have the state legislature revisit that.
Okay. So this one starts with Andre. Should students in middle school and high school be allowed to have their cell phones at their desks during classes?
I taught for 8 years and wrestled with those things. And unfortunately, I would have to say yes.
Okay. Mark?
No, they should not, unless there's special circumstances regarding doing research projects or something of that nature.
Okay. Jim?
No, unless the teacher has a purpose to have them use their phone.
Okay. Heidi?
I'd agree with Jim. No, unless teacher has a purpose.
Alyssa?
No, and they are doing that, and it's working.
Okay. And Heidi?
No, and select schools are doing it. It's working great. I wish they all would.
Okay. And then we're back around to Paul.
No, unless it relates to the curriculum.
And we're back around to Art.
And say no unless it relates to the curriculum.
Did I leave anybody out earlier? Okay, make sure I don't leave anybody out. Okay, 2 more. This will start with Mark, I guess. Does the school district have the right to monitor student activity on social media?
It's a great question.
Do we have a minute on that one?
No, unless there are circumstances brought to the attention of the administration.
Okay. Jim?
Yes, related to certain issues.
Okay, Heidi?
I would say yes, related to safety and security in our buildings.
Alyssa?
I would say yes, related to safety and security, and also with regards to school-associated posts.
And Heidi?
Yes, I believe in certain situations.
Okay, Paul?
Yes, in certain situations that relate to safety and security and bullying.
Art?
My 1984 members, no, absolutely no. But the kids will tell them if there's a problem. But no, the school should not be monitoring kids' social media. No.
Okay, Andre?
I would say yes.
Okay. Let's see, one more, and that'll be down to Jim? Yeah, okay. As springs and falls are getting warmer, do we need to put air conditioning in all our schools?
I actually think we do have air conditioning in all our schools. So,
And
I know we have some sort of ventilation system in all of our schools, so I would have to take a look at what that looks like and what temperatures it's safe for.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. And so, I mean, to whether they have air conditioning, but we need to look at temperatures. Let's look at temperatures and see what needs to be modified.
okay, Heidi?
That's terrifying to me if we have schools without air conditioning or not proper temperatures. I think Alyssa said it perfectly. Especially as a large district, it goes back to disparate outcomes. If we have certain students that are roasting, that is unacceptable.
Paul?
I would say yes. I'm not aware of any that do not have air conditioning.
Okay, Art?
I'm pro air conditioning, yes.
Andre?
The same. Yeah, I'm pro, yes.
And Mark?
I think optimal student performance would occur when there's temperature control, so I would be in favor of that.
Okay, thank you all for cooperating with that. The next one, we'll go back to the whole minute you get, and we'll start with Art Mills, and I will find my place, which is not on that one. Here it is. Okay. Many schools and libraries are facing requests from parents for books to have the books that parents find objectionable removed. What criteria would you apply if asked to remove books from the library or classroom?
You said that was for me? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm a former journalist long, long ago in another life. I don't believe in any censorship whatsoever. I think that censoring ideas from our children is the wrong answer. I do believe you need to make it age appropriate. And I do believe that you wouldn't want your advanced calculus book if you only have one or two of them available to your third grader, but not your senior in high school. So you make it age appropriate. I think if you were to put some kind of criteria upon what books are appropriate, you might say, if the school board has a policy, and it does, that certain words can be read or said in front of the school board, and certain words can't, that if a school board wouldn't let a book be read in front of them, that maybe it shouldn't be in front of our kids. And if the school board wants to change that, that the school board should allow the parents to read those books in front of them. And so I think we have a kind of a duality thing. I don't want to censor anything, but I do want to I want to make sure that it's age appropriate. I want to make sure that parents who are upset with it can confront our school boards with their problems.
Thank you. Next response, Heidi Kakamo.
Okay, perfect. So I would just say it's 2023. Nobody wants to ban books in our school, and I will just stick with what Art said too. Is we just need to make sure they're age appropriate. The next question then is, how do we define age appropriate? And I think that involves our community. I do think that there's a vast disagreement on what is age appropriate, and I think that is why it's so important to bring back our community and set some standards. I mean, the biggest questions I like to ask is, do you think we should have criteria for the books that we're putting in our schools? What does that criteria look like? Because that question, I get a different answer every single time, and so I think our community needs to come together to make some choices around what is age appropriate and put those standards in place across the schools.
Thank you. Next responds Heidi Danielson.
Our district does have a policy to review any concerns from parents. I was on the Curriculum Advisory Committee for 2 years. So there are members of our community who can be a part of that, and in the district office who can hear any requests to review materials. I believe that we need to leave it up to our professionals, our librarians and our educators. We have processes in place throughout the district to have parents opt out. So if there's a concerning, if they have a concern with a book or another subject matter, they can opt out of that and their student can receive different material. But I don't believe that a concern by one parent trumps the rights of another parent to have their student choose to read that material.
Thank you. Next response, Alyssa Dare Nelson.
I'm so glad because I want to second everything Heidi has said. It saves me some time and effort in saying all of those things. I'm so grateful for our experts that are educated in curriculum building, in child development, our librarians. These are the people that we've hired to support some of these decisions. As parents, we know our kids the best, right? So it is up to us to decide if maybe our child isn't quite ready for this book for one reason or another, and that's okay to opt out of those things. But our children need to have the freedom to learn, and that includes having books to read.
Thank you. Next response, Paul Wickstrom.
I think we're all ardent supporters of the First Amendment, and for me, we need to give as much access as we can in our schools to children, but really with books, we need to start with the standards, and ultimately, age appropriate is I think where a lot of people might agree that that's the standard that really matters. We also need to look at outside sources for evaluating and rating books. Like I think there's an organization called the Common Sense Foundation that does that sort of thing and rates books by age appropriateness. For me, the practical standard is, can it be read out loud in front of the school board or in a place of work without causing controversy? That's really the litmus test for me.
Thank you. Next response, Mark Kelleher.
So I'm not a proponent of book banning. I've got a finance background. I would want in place some sort of policy regarding judicious spending of monies of any sort, whether it be for books or anything else. I think at the end of the day, if there's a subsection of the library that's designated as a set aside, so for those parents that are interested in keeping their children from reading such books, it would be a special section with special access. And I think that would be a perfectly reasonable solution, because at the end of the day, having the parents involved in raising the children and bringing up the education is of paramount importance, as much as having good educators.
Thank you. Next response, Jim DeMay.
No, I would not be into banning books. We do have librarians, curricular experts, educators that look at these things for us, and they determine some age appropriateness. Parents always have opt-outs, and I've had conversations with Andre about this, is that, we have to be open to conflicting ideas, even sometimes difficult ideas. We have to teach our kids to have conversations with each other, to disagree without being disagreeable. And that's a big part of this, too, is that we can't be really scared of ideas out there.
Thank you. And the final response from Andre Cohen.
Yeah, so I come from the Columbo generation. I don't know if people ever watched that show, but the thing about Columbo is he was always asking why. And so I think when parents say that they want to opt out, we need to be asking as a school district, why do you want to opt out? When parents say that they don't want their kids to read a book or whatever, the question should be why. And the more that we're able to open up the communication gaps and recognize that the Curriculum Advisory Committee is a great committee, but I don't know that many parents know that that isn't a way to access the system, and also following up on some of those opt-outs. And I'm not sure if the district already does that. I'll do my homework on that, but I think following up on those opt-outs is crucial. Thank you.
Thank you. The next responses for the next question will begin with Mark Kelleher. Okay. What steps would you take, if any, to promote social and racial justice within 621? Is the school board leading by example? Do you have an equity policy? And if there's a pre-existing one and you're not on the board, are there changes that you would want to make? It's a lot of little bits.
So regarding equity, my view is every resource that we as a school district have should be made available to every individual, no matter what that individual's economic circumstances background is, no matter what their religion, no matter what their gender, no matter what their sexual orientation. At the end of the day, the individual is identified by the student, by the teacher to in essence bring out the teacher is bringing out the strengths and identifying the weaknesses and catering specifically a plan to that student's specific needs. So my view is that there's individualization that takes place in dealing with these situations.
Okay, thank you. Next response, Andre Cohen.
So, Art and I had a long conversation about this very topic, and I'll just surmise it to say this, that I think it's important that we talk about equality, right? So that everyone gets what they need. However, equity says that people get what they need in ways that make sense for them. And I think as long as we're engaging our parents and we're engaging our students in ways that make sense for them, and we're making sure that everyone is getting quality pieces, but just as in our families, our brothers and sisters didn't always get the same clothes we got, but we all got clothes. And so when we think about that in our school district, I think it's important to make sure that Irondale and Mounds View have the same resources in terms of access, in terms of people who are being coaches and mentors and amplifying the great things that they do equally across those districts, across those schools, even if they're a little bit different.
Thank you. Next response from Art Mills.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to my website, millsmovement.com, I wrote an exquisite, well-constructed, award-winning article just the other day on equity. It's just a blog post. But I give quite a lot of detail about my thoughts on equity, and I'm going to tell you right now, if you go to the dictionary right now, you go to Google right now, and you look up equity definition, it's going to tell you the quality of being fair and impartial. Great. I agree. If you then apply that definition to the Mounds U 2020 equity promise, which says that we will give persons of color a greater aid and greater services and not make them available to others, well, that's not fair nor impartial, right? So you can't have an equity policy that is in itself the violation of the word equity. You can be equal. You can have tweaks, but you cannot have an equitable equity policy. And we do now, and we're not going to when I'm on the board. So,
Thank you. Next response, Heidi Danielson.
I have lots of thoughts about the equity promise. It's actually one of the reasons that I got really involved in the district. When my kids started at Edgewood Middle School, I was there a lot, and the educators at Edgewood really worked with the parents organization to say, look at who's coming to our school parents-wise. We're getting a lot of our white middle-class parents here. We're not getting a lot of our other parents in the school. Why is that? We need to get to the root of that problem, and we need to make sure that everyone feels welcome at that school. And ever since then, I've really tried to ask myself that. My experience in our Mounds U schools is not the same as many people in our district. My students' experience, my kids' experience isn't. And I think we need to understand that every single person brings who they are with them to the school. I'm on the Equity Council. I work with Jason Knight and Johnson. He is working for every student in our schools. Every student in our schools, no matter their background, no matter their race, no matter their socioeconomic status.
Next response, thank you. Next response, Paul Wickstrom.
Thank you. I'm a strong proponent of equality and really giving everybody the strongest opportunity that we can give them to succeed, and basically help all the students rise to their highest potential level. I believe strongly in treating everybody equally, regardless of race, sexual identity, preference, etc. We really need to focus on the students' needs and getting each and every student to rise up that flow that educators sometimes talk about. When I was learning how to coach soccer, I took a really good coaching class from a college coach locally, and she put a diagonal line on the board. She goes, psychologists call this flow. All your players are going to be somewhere along this flow. Your job as a coach is not to get everyone necessarily at the top. You want to help them all advance. That really stuck with me through coaching. It worked really well. It helped me lay out my practice plans and how I ran the games and how I treated my players, and it seemed to work very well for me over the years.
Thank you. Next response, Alyssa Dare Nelson.
If we have two people who are in the water, one is wearing a full set of wool clothes, has not slept, has not eaten, and has never had a swimming lesson in their life, and the other is in a wetsuit that has buoyancy, right? Has had swim lessons, copious amounts in fact, and is doing just fine, one of those swimmers is going to have more challenges. Equality says if there is only one life preserver, you don't give it to either one. Equity says you give it to the one who is having the challenges. Our goal is for our children to swim and to thrive, which means that we need to focus on equity. There's systemic equity, there's also interventional things. Jason Knight and Johnson and the Diversity and Equity Council are doing great work. I have so much more to say, but I'm going to stop.
Thank you. And the final response on this question, Heidi Kakamo.
Yeah, so I'm sitting by the ladies over here that really like Jason, the Director of Equity, because I am very much in favor of this man. He said some key things that have stuck with me quite significantly and have made me think a lot. He references each student, and if you go into his office, he has each written in all capital, meaning we need to focus on each student, each individual student's needs. We can't assume that one is wearing a life preserver. We don't know. We have to look at them. We cannot assume by race, gender, or socioeconomic class what their needs may be, because we may then miss some students. We have to look at each student. We have great resources that we can provide, but we have to look at each individual. One of the other great things he said, I say it all the time, is Every student and family that walks through our doors needs to feel embraced with everything they need to succeed. And that, to me, is that you can fight about equity, equality, but that you can't argue with, I think, and that is where I stand.
Thank you. And my mistake, that wasn't the final one. There's still one more. Jim DeMay.
Thank you. As everybody's mentioned, our district has an equity promise. In 2019, we reevaluated the program. We looked at a stronger eye towards equity, and we came up with a lot of interesting things from the intake of new students from new American communities, and we made our schools, entering our schools, a lot friendlier place. But when I think about equity, I'm going to go back to something I said earlier, is that we really have to encourage kids to get into early childhood education in our district. We have those 500 kids, we're getting more seats. If kids are ready to learn by kindergarten, and we spend a lot of funds and efforts on those kids learning by 3rd grade, you're going to hear a lot of statistics, but read by 3rd grade is a real important statistic. And I think that's where we have to focus on equity.
Thank you. Okay. Now, we'll probably run a little bit over my original target, but let's put in one more question and then the closings. Will we start with Jim DeMay on the next one? Because I want to touch upon a topic that's often raised by the youth. The young people will have to live with the impacts of climate change a lot longer than the rest of us will, and so this is a big concern for them. What do you see as the school district's role in addressing issues of climate and sustainability?
Well, I think environmental education is very important, but the most important thing about environmental education is that we base it on real science. The Earth is getting warmer. There are man-made, human-made issues out there, and that we also need to teach kids the science behind this so they understand it. Also, I'm really excited along the way that, our students bring up this subject all the time. They embrace our environmental education. They study it in our classrooms, but they're also going on to university to go study this, that it's a high priority for them.
Thank you. Next response from Art Mills.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned a little earlier, I'm kind of a Tesla geek, and I remember joking with my daughter about how much of Nevada you would need to have solar panels and battery storage, and she said, Dad, you're a geek, shut up. And I said, okay, so no more of that. But I mean, as Jim said, you have to teach them the climate change based on the science that is available at the time, and it has to be science that is reasonable and understood to be in effect. You have to have them understand what that means and what changes they could have. And as a school district, you asked about the buses. When buses are ready, maybe that's something you do. How much recycling is being done? Are there single drink plastic cups being sold, or water bottles like this right here out of the vending machine? Or do we have renewable cups and kind of water fountains? You ask those questions, and you kind of bring them down both from a board level into the schools, and you have to make sure your teachers are teaching the best science available so the kids have the best information they have to understand what it means for them as they go through life. So.
Thank you. Next response, Mark Kelleher.
Individual responsibility is going to be part of any successful endeavor in addressing climate change. Personally, I spent my entire career bicycling, commuting to work, and the only thing that would stop me would be icy roads or temperatures below 16 degrees. And I'm proud of the fact that my carbon footprint was small, but we need to help the younger generation understand that they too make a difference as individuals. It's going to be what they can do as individuals that's going to guide us towards finding the solutions as well as mitigating some of the issues associated with climate change.
Thank you. Next response, Paul Wickstrom.
There's a lot of scientific debate about climate change. It's important within the schools that we teach, both sides of that debate and make sure that students are, taught how to think and not necessarily what to think. So within this topic, making sure that students are exposed to, all sides of that discussion and debate. At the school district level, we need to make sure we use our resources responsibly. And like Mark Kelleher just mentioned, individually be responsible for our own utilization of resources.
Thank you. Next response, Andre Cohen.
I have two words: sustainability and stewardship. I think we really need to pivot from this conversation about climate change and all of these things and really talk about how do we teach our students, because they're yearning for it. Where does my food come from? How do I grow food? How do I reduce my carbon footprint by having a zero-sum purchasing patterns? And so I think we need to really focus more on sustainability and stewardship of our resources.
Okay, thank you. And now to Heidi Kakamo.
I really liked what Andre had to say actually down there, and I just want to add to that. When we do that and we bring in the stewardship, we're showing them accountability for their behavior. And in every little way we can do that, we're preparing them for the future. I feel like that's why it goes back to safety. We're not giving them boundaries. We need to in every aspect, to teaching them how to do their homework, teaching them how to behave around others, teaching them what results from your behavior. I think that ties right into this topic as well.
Thank you. And to Alyssa Dare Nelson.
We do need to focus on science. It is important that our kids understand and make the connection between their individual actions and its impact on our planet. That's something that is very important, helping them understand that they are global citizens, not just citizens of this district. Encouraging attention and encouraging input and involvement in some of the choices that we're making as a district, as we look at what changes are we making to our infrastructure regarding social, panels and LED lights and those kinds of things. Let's include our students in some of those conversations so they can connect the dots.
Thank you. And the final response, Heidi Danielson.
Great ideas. I'm not going to echo what's already been said. I'm just going to talk about a couple things that are happening in the district that I'm really excited about. Two of my kids took the Anoka Ramsey Community College course at Irondale, Environmental Science, and that gave our entire family a crash course on exactly what Alyssa was talking about, that personal connection with making a change. And we are now full composters because of that. We also have in many of our school lunchrooms now a program where food waste goes to farms to feed pigs. And the students know that, and the students are excited about that, but they don't want to create a lot of waste for the pigs either. So they understand on what's going on. We have community gardens at some of our schools. We have outdoor classrooms at Edgewood in some of our schools. Our students are taking this and we're responding. The Irondale Earth Club came to us a few years ago, wanted to know when we could be carbon free and challenged us. So I think our students in this way, again, are leading the way. We just need to egg them on.
Thank you. Okay, I think we've covered a lot of topics. There are many, many more that we did not get to, but I'm sure you all know that. So I hope that people will feel free to go to the websites, to reach out to the candidates at other forums or after tonight, if you still have questions that you haven't had answered. Yeah, so we will now go to closing statements. I don't have any lengthy statements from any of the candidates who are not here. I know they regret not being able to be here because of their business commitments. But we'll now go to the closing statements from the candidates who are here. And these are in reverse order from, hopefully I got these all flipped around, from the opening statement. So we'll start with Jim DeMay.
Well, thank you. If you follow my campaign and hear what I talk about all the time, I talk about kids and teachers. I'm very into classrooms. 94% of our parents rate our teachers good or excellent. That is a success. We, as a district, need to retain these teachers. We need to work with them and provide the needs that we have, or the needs our children have in the classroom. As I said earlier, my focus budgetarily, and we can talk about a lot of things, but money is where the rubber hits the road. We spend 76% on classrooms, and I want to keep that up. Tonight I'd like to thank the League. I learned a lot tonight, and I actually agreed with some folks on some things I didn't think I was going to agree on. So as my earlier comment, it is always good to learn to agree or disagree with people in an agreeable way. So thank you.
Thank you. Next closing statement from Heidi Kakamo.
I guess I was at the end. I apologize. All right. So I think it's interesting to just remind people that we spend $19,000 per pupil, and less than 2/3 can read, and just over half are proficient in science, and that is very bothersome to me. I think we need a reminder that school kids are being injured in school. I mean, there's no way of getting around it, and it needs to be addressed. We need a district-wide policy around some of these things. I'm running because, frankly, the teachers I've been talking to are struggling. They're struggling to have their classrooms under control. In the elementary levels, it's disruptions. You can't teach in an environment like that. In middle school and the high schools, it's the fighting. So they don't feel safe, or it's just pure chaos. So we need to get back to a situation where our children feel safe, our teachers can teach, and our students can learn. And so I feel like we need to stick to these core few things before we can even move on.
Thank you. Next closing statement from Art Mills.
Yeah, I'll make my statement entirely personal and not at all about my campaign. I want to say that everybody on this stage right now cares. We're not here because this is a political stepping stone. We're not here because this pays a lot of money. We're all either parents who love our kids. Well, we care about the people in this room. We care about the teachers who are teaching our kids. None of us are a caricature of the loony left or the far right, crazy Nazi right. We're all just people. And as Jim said, you'll discover if you actually allow yourself to listen that you might actually agree more than you disagree. And that probably is for everybody you've ever met or heard of. Talk to people. Ask them questions. Approach them. I'm certainly approachable. You know what I think. Not everything I think is right. Believe it or not, something could maybe be sideways. But just know we care about the kids. We care about the community. We're up here to help. And please give us the dignity and respect to know that we're not doing this for any other reason than to help, even if you disagree with us. So just talk to us if you have questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next closing statement from Andre Cohen.
So I have a bunch of prepared statements, and I have to throw them out because people changed how I think about folks on this stage.
You don't like me?
What I will say, though, is that, I entered this race as a dad who loves and cares for his daughter and their friends. And I'll be real frank. If her test scores suck, and she loves going to school and she loves being a contributing member of society, then I'm happy with that. But if she wants to remove herself from this planet because she's disengaged or disrespected in school, that's not acceptable. All children are looking for safety, significance, and belonging. I believe that it is our responsibility on this board to assure that that happens. And right now, I think I'm one of the few candidates that's not a part of a slate, that's not a part of an endorsed group. And so as an independent, I'll take that as a stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Alyssa Deere Nelson.
Thank you. It's important to me and to the existing school board that every child in this district has the opportunity to succeed, to thrive, and to belong at the school that they attend. The reality is, as a school board member, we are not the one loud voice. We are a team, and we're a team of people who work together for the common goal, which means that there's tough conversations, which means that there are disagreements. But in the end, we're focused on what is important, and that is our students and our staff. We do this by finding common ground. We do this by working together. We do this by being willing to have difficult conversations. And I, for one, am excited to join this amazing team of school board members who already care, who are already successful, and who already, and you'll have to ask me later.
Thank you. And now down to the other end, to Paul Wickstrom.
Hi, I'd like to just lay out quickly some of the imperatives I think are important. One, I've already mentioned, open up the regular school board meetings to public input. Two, implement a discipline policy that is comprehensive and effective across the district. Three, establish a safety incident reporting system. I really like what Rob Reitz is doing at the Mounds View High School. That should be a model for the rest of the district. That's something I started campaigning on. I was very glad to see him come out with a video 2 weeks ago on safety incident and reporting system. 4, conduct listening sessions, as I mentioned earlier, across all the stakeholder groups. 5, set the tone with emphasis on the early English as a second language, and especially the kids have been most affected by COVID in the elementary ages. And 6, really develop a better forecasting model and a long-range improvement plan for the district. Our budget's $214 million, I think, in 2022. Our enrollment's down by several hundred students with a loss of $4 million of revenue in that time frame. We need to really put together a good roadmap and forecasting models to have better governance over our district.
Thank you. The next closing statement from Heidi Danielson.
The Mounds View School District continues to provide excellent education to our students and to our community. 88% of district residents rate the quality of education as excellent or good. I look forward to continuing to serve on the Mounds View School Board as we work with our excellent staff and our administration in our schools to work to meet the needs of each student, like we've been talking about tonight. To help them find success, whatever that means for them, whether that means the early college program, whether that means the brand new welding program at Irondale that we created in conjunction with our trades, whatever our students want to do and however they define success. You can find out more about me on my website, HeidiDanielson.com. Feel free to reach out there. I'm more than happy to have conversations with people in our community, whether or not I get your vote. I want to thank the league again for hosting it. I want to thank everyone up here for being willing to answer and being willing to just meet with our community tonight. Again, I'm Heidi Danielson, and that's Heidi with a D. Irondale, I guess you can remember. That's where my kids attended school. I think I'm the only Knight up here.
Thank you. And the final closing statement from Mark Kelleher.
Thank you. Well, the culture of any organization begins at the top. And I'm running for school board to reinvigorate the board's focus back towards providing academic excellence to our students. Our students deserve to have the best academic experience that we can provide so that when they graduate, they are the best version of who they themselves can be. It's going to take a lot of work, but we can do this. It's going to take dedication and focus, but we can do this. And it's going to take some time to get things right again, but we can do this. I'll be there to lead the charge, but I need your vote. Please cast your vote for me, Mark Kelleher. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. That will wrap up our forum. It's been a very interesting evening, and I appreciate how cooperative you've all been with how fast we had to keep going to get a lot of topics out. But of course, there are still other topics for which we did not have time. So I encourage everyone to check out campaign literature, websites, or reach out to the candidates if you need more information on a particular subject. I'd like to remind the audience that all opinions expressed tonight are those of the candidates and not that of the League of Women Voters, and we never endorse candidates. I want to thank all of the candidates for the ISD 621 School Board for stepping up to run for office. It is not easy, and it's a great responsibility. We need participation in all aspects of democracy for it to work, from informed voter to elected official. Thank you to the candidates with us tonight for sharing their time, knowledge, and positions. Thank you to the audience for their attention. Thanks to the camera crew and 9 North for broadcasting and recording the forum, and to my league colleagues for making all of this come together. Check out the 9 North website for the rebroadcast schedule. To all listening, now that you have more information, please ponder your options seriously and then please vote. On or before Tuesday, November 7th. Early voting opened September 22nd, but I think right now that may be down at the county level. There's a local spot that will be open as of October 20th, from October 20th through November 3rd at the Ramsey County Library. If you need information about registration, requesting an absentee ballot, locating your polling place, tracking a ballot, go to mnvotes.gov. This will take you to the Secretary of State's office website. That has all the answers and in about 10 languages. So thank you for listening. Good night and good luck.